The first thing about using R in ArcGIS Pro is to enable or ensure that ArcGIS Pro can see the R installation and that you install what's called ArcGIS bindings. And that's all done through ArcGIS Pro. I'll show you where. You go to Project in the menu. And again, you must already have R installed for this and have a 60 board and use the 64-bit version of R. So in the project pane, you go to Options, Geoprocessing, and down at the bottom of that pane, you'll see ArcGIS support. And it should find a home directory for your R. In this case right here, it found that one. I have a number of different versions of R running. So I have my default right now is R 3.63, so it's an older version of R, not the 4.02 or 4.03 that's current. So I use this version, and then it will ask you to install ArcGIS binding. So you look at the little message here. It'll either say, please install, and then you click install from, internet. You can also check for package updates. And once both of those are filled, it shows the default version of R, and then it says installed ArcGIS binding package version. All you have to do is click OK. And now you'll be able to use R from within ArcGIS Pro. So I'll go back here. And to do this, I'm going to be working right here in I have a Ottawa COVID geodatabase right there. And in that geodatabase, I can right click and I'll say new toolbox right there. And I'll call this toolbox I'll rename it here, the R analysis. Of course, the name doesn't matter. The next thing I need to do is open up R. Like so. And I'm just opening it up through RStudio. Obviously, you don't need to use RStudio for this, but you could just open up R itself. So here again, you have to make sure that in your tools, global options, you will have the R version to be the same one that you saw in ArcGIS when you went to the project pane and then geoprocessing. Whichever one it shows there must be the same one here. And of course, you can click change and choose whichever one you want. But you're always going to be using a 64-bit one with ArcGIS Pro. So that's all good there. Then I have just a blank script window, and I'm just going to save this script window to start. So I'm going to click save, and this will hold the R script that will go along with my particular toolbox tool that I'm going to create in ArcGIS Pro. So here I go to, where did I even put that? I think that was in temp. There's the Ottawa COVID GDB. I don't want to save it right in there, but I'll save it in the folder temp just outside here. And I'll call this my R script.r, like so. My R script.r. And click save. So now I can go back to the ArcGIS Pro window, to the toolbox that I left right here, R analysis, right click and say new script. And I'll call this summary stats. So the name, summary stats, and the name is important here because the name itself is what you would call in Python. So if you want to use this tool in a Python later on, well, the name is important. So I'm going to put small s summary and then large S for stats. You can't have any special characters or anything in there. other than underscores. The label is what you see in the toolbox itself. So I'll just call show all summary statistics, stat. And then it says script file. And now here's where I navigate and choose that script file that I just had. So that was just in the temp folder there. Sort by date. Hit my F5 key just to refresh that. There it is, my script R, my R script.R. And I click OK. Now, don't do this. You can import script. So if let's say you want to share this tool with somebody afterwards, then all you'd have to share is the geodatabase that has the tool in it and the toolbox. If you click on import R script, it will bring the script into the tool itself. We don't want to do that. That's the last thing you would do. We don't want to do that right now because we're creating and editing and debugging in our script. And if we import it, well, it doesn't help any because we won't be able to do any editing or changing of the code or anything like that yet. So that's something you would do later. And then you click on parameters. So what types of parameters will I need? Well, I'll need to send in a feature class. So input under label, input feature class. The type will be a feature layer. So I'll choose feature layer, click OK. It's required, and direction is input. The output of this tool, for in the first case here, will just be into the information box of the tool. So when the tool runs, it always produces a box, an information box. It tells you what happened. And in there, we're going to show the results of the summary statistics for all the numeric fields. And so once you have that, we would click OK. Later on, we might come back and specify an output of some kind. Let's say we want to send something back to ArcGIS Pro that is a table or a feature class. Well, then we would need another input on the tool for the output layer. We'll see that a bit later. For now, that's all we need to do like that. And if I open up that tool, where is it here? Ottawa COVID. Our analysis, there's a tool, show all summary statistics. And if I click on that, it just looks like this, just like a regular tool, any tool in ArcGIS Pro. Input feature class, so if I had a feature class, I could drag it there. We'll come back to that later. And for now, I'm going to bring in the census tracts. In the census tracts feature data set, there's a CT 2016, which I'll bring in to my map, just so I have something in there to work with after. Now, if I open up my tool again, input feature class, well, I can drag and drop that in there. And that's what's going to be sent to the R script, is CT 2016. Now let's go back to the R script and make it so that it can receive that input. So I go back here and I create a function. And this function is the same for every single R script that will be used in ArcGIS Pro or through ArcGIS Pro. It's tool underscore exec equals function in underscore params out params, and then your function braces, brackets or braces. And then in here, this is what we have as the function. Let's just start off by testing to see if this works. So inside this function, I'm just going to print. I'm going to say print, and I'm going to say in here just a string. The function has been called and executed. So it's just a string that'll print when I run the function. from ArcGIS Pro. So first I save it. Then I go back to ArcGIS Pro. And I've put in my input, CT 2016, and I click Run. Then in the details, see it says the function has been called and executed. So I know that when I click Run, that it ran that R script. And anything that I put like print in that R script was printed right here to this messages window. So going back to the R script now. So that's how we can send messages back with just the print function. Now let's get the first parameter. So I'll just go in here and I'll say FC for feature class equals in params 1. Because the parameters come as a list. So we might have multiple feature classes being sent to this function, and then it will be a list of feature classes for the in params. So in params would have feature class 1, and then the next list component, feature class 2, the next list component, feature class 3, etc. And since I'm only sending one, I have to know this, right? Because I'm making this. I know that I just have one box that accepts a single input feature class. Well, that will be in the first position of that list. And that's why I say in params, and then list component 1. And let's just to see if that works, let's just send, let's just send that back. I'll say print FC. And I'll save it and I'll run it. And we'll look at the details here. And it says running script, and then prints, it sends back this thing saying CMAP CT 2016 XML. That's basically the name of the feature class. So let's do something else. Let's send back instead the names of the fields in that feature class. So I'll save it, go back and run, do the details. It says null. Well, why is it null? Because this parameter right here for the first feature class is just a character string. So instead I'll say class FC. I want to send back the class of FC so you can see what that is. So I'll save it, close that info, run it again, view details, and it says character. So all that's been sent over is a character string, which is the name of the feature class right here. And it just stores that string there, and that's all it does. Now, to actually do something with that particular feature class, I have to say arc.open. So I'll say FC feature class O equals arc.open FC. Then once it's opened, I need to select it. So I'll say FCS equals arc.select FCO. And then finally, I want to create a R object, and I'll make an SF object out of this. So I'll say in layer equals arc to SF FCS, like so. And it helps. Notice these were not auto-completed or anything. So what I could do is I could load up in here in the tool exec function, I can say library or required ArcGIS binding. I should also see that over here. If I do that there, library ArcGIS binding, like so. And then arc.checkProduct, like so. Now when I type these things, equals arc to, or data, I should say, I think that says data to SF, and that'll be FC/S there. Then I could send back the names of the data. So I could say print names in layer and send that back now to ArcGIS. So I'll go back to ArcGIS. Oh, I gotta make sure I did those ones too. I haven't used this for a while. So arc.open, yeah, arc.open, arc.select, yeah, so that's good. So it's always these three, you know, to open any feature class that comes from parameters. Because remember, the parameters is just the name. And since we're running it in ArcGIS Pro, the tool, it will look in the table of contents for the name for FC. We open it, then we select it, and then here, the data to SF, we convert it into a SF object. So I'm also going to require SF. That should be require, not required. ArcGIS binding, require SF, print names, save, and then go back to ArcGIS Pro, close that, and run it. Oh, and I have it couldn't find data to SF. So I think that's arc.data to SF, like so. So I run it, I save it, go back after reading what the failure was, and I'll run it again. And there we go, it shows it all in the click there, not there. Let's see, view details, no. View details here. So as we can see now, in the printout here, for the messages, it sent back the names of all of the different, each of the different columns. So we have object ID, CTU ID, POP 2016, median income, etc. So now let's we'll do a summary on those. So I'll go back and I'll say, okay, since if I can print the names, I can print the summary like that, very simply. Save, go back, run, view details. And there now I have a summary statistics for every column in my feature class. So I can see what each one is. For example, in this case, the counts for the people with Aboriginal identity. That's what Aboriginal means. Visible minority counts, university degree counts, public transit counts. She shows me minimum, maximums, medians, means, and quartiles for each one. And again, the only other way to do that, right? If I wanted to, that gives me the ability to look at them all at once, which is quite handy here. Otherwise, I'd have to open up the attribute table to do the same thing, and I'd have to click on, okay, this one, right click, statistics, and then wait for that to come up, and then look here, and there's the summary statistics as well. And it shows me the distribution as well. And then if I look at the next one, I have to close this one, go to the next column, do the same thing. And you see this is already taking way more time than clicking on the button. So that's one advantage of just doing that and then looking at those. and using R to do that type of computations. In this case, we're not doing something that we can't do already in ArcGIS Pro or in ArcGIS Desktop. It doesn't matter either one. You can get the field statistics. But this just makes it more efficient, especially if you have to, you have a number of them that you have to look at in each of your data layers. So what about sending that back as a table instead? So as a brand new table into the geodatabase. Well, how could we do that? Well, we'd have to construct a table. So if I go back to R right here, I'd have to do some sort of loop, and within the loop, concatenate the summary values together each time. So first I'll just go over here and see what that looks like. So if I say, do I have an X value in there? So I have X, I say summary X, names, summary X. So we can get the names like that, and then the rows. So back in my script, I wanted to check that we could do that. I can say this, I say I'll get the names first of the columns. So I'll say call names. Oh, that's a built-in function. Just call it CNAME equals names in layer. And I'll say for I in CNAMEs, like so. And then in that loop, I'm going to construct a vector. So before I go in the loop, I have to create an empty vector to hold things. So this will be empty vector. I'll call it crow equals vector numeric. And that creates a empty numeric vector called crow. That way I can add to it in here. So I could say rbind, for example. So I'll say for I and CNAMEs, or should we do it by number? And we'll also want one to hold, or do we need that? No, we don't need that. So we'll go for I and each for the name of each layer. So I can say this, for example, to hold the summary, I'll just say X equals summary. And this will be in layer $I. And then I'll have another line that says rbind. I should say 0 equals rbind 0 X, like so. And I'm just going to check that that works first. So I'll click save. I'll go back to here and see if there's anything that comes up. So after I write a few lines, I want to make sure there's no errors coming up. No errors are coming up. So that's good. So I can go back and continue here. So in this little loop, we want to get the from each of the layers columns, we want to get the summary values and then tack them onto a row, like so. And then we only care about numeric ones, so we'll just say here, we'll say if, and I need to put in the double ones here, since it's a list component. It's a data frame, and each column is a list. So we're going to do that, and hopefully that should fix everything. Let's give that a try. Go back to ArcGIS Pro run. And some warnings here. So there's the raw table output. And it also gives some warnings. Number of columns of the result is not a multiple of the vector length 2. So which columns are not being output? And because of that warning we had, what we need to do is, that's because some of them have NAs, no data in some of the rows. And so that adds an extra column to the summary value. So there's usually 6 values like this in the summary: your minimum, first quartile, median, mean, third quartile, max. And then if I don't just say I want the first 6 things in there, whoops, just showing an example over here, then I get that one that says there's an NA in one of them. So that adds a 7th. And that's what that particular message we were getting here is: the number of columns in the result is not a multiple of vector of the length of the second argument. And so wherever there was an NA, then it was no longer having 6 things, but 7. The next one would have 6. The next one might have 7 and 6 again, depending on where those NAs were happening. So to relieve or get rid of that issue, then when I put the summary in here, I'm just going to say I want the values down here. How about there? 1 to 6. And I'll save that and we'll rerun it again to make sure we get rid of those warnings. That looks good. View details. Good. So now we got rid of the warnings. So there's that would be our table right there. Now we want to add one more thing to that particular table, which is going to be the name of the respective variable along the sides. So as a variable in that table. So we'll add it in the last thing. And that means we want to, when we're in here, before printing C row, we also want to capture which ones were used in the numeric summary, so which column names. So I'll have another C row equals vector character on the outside here. I'll call it not C row, but N row for names of row. And then down here, N row equals N row, C N row, and I, like so. And then C row equals C bind, or equals data dot frame, C row, comma, name equals C, or N row, names row, like so. And then print C row. So give that a try now. Good. And there's the names there. So now I want to save that as a, we have all the, as a table. So since it's a data frame now, and that's why I use data frame here, I can write that. I can say arc.write, right? And then it wants the arc.write path and data, data 0, but we also need to specify the parameter. I'll call it out1, like that. And that has to come in up here. So in parameters, and then I'll say out1 equals out params 1. Now, I don't have an out parameter yet in my tool, so I have to go back to ArcMap. I'll save this. Out1, and I should say out1, comma. So out1 is where this will be written to, and that's written to ArcGIS Pro. And that means I must go back to my catalog, to my tool here, right-click, properties, and then parameters. and I have to have an output here. Then the type over here. And I'm looking for this will be a table. Like so, required, and I have to put direction as output, like so. And I can click OK. Now, when I go here, it asks me for two things: the input feature class, and then I must give a name for the output. It automatically gives me one here, and I'll click Run. There we go. So it's created a table. It didn't automatically put it here. So that means it's going to be in the geodatabase. So I have to go to the catalog. To the default geodatabase for the project. I think it's right there. Default, and there it is. CT 2016 summary stats. So I can bring it in and open up that table in here. And there it is. I have now a table with all the summary stats for each of the numeric columns in CT 2016. So all those are all the minimum values, all the max, median, all the means, third, max, etc. So that's the basic way to do this, just to demonstrate that you can use R and ArcGIS to do any type of complex analysis you want. Because remember, there's 15,000 libraries available in R to do everything that you could possibly imagine in terms of analysis. So it's much more powerful than, just the GIS you're using. But the GIS system does some things very well, like editing. So creation and editing of geospatial data in R can be done, but it's not really worthwhile. That's best done in a GIS program. But as you've seen, all of the analysis we've done this whole term did not require us to use ArcGIS Pro or anything. But for people who don't know R, that need a solution, then being able to provide it with an R script or R toolbox can be very useful, since they don't then have to know how to program in R or know anything about R other than being able to install it.